Well, Thal, you know, there are more Americans missing in Mexico than you may think. Hundreds each year. And the number of our fellow citizens who disappear there is now growing. Arizona Congresswoman Debbie Lesko joins us. She is a member of the Congressional Border Security Caucus. Congresswoman, welcome. Does it surprise you that the cartels apparently have been snatching Americans, even though in the past that has supposedly been off limits? What do you think about this?
Well, unfortunately, it doesn't surprise me because I've gone down to the border numerous times, and the Customs and Border Patrol officers that are on the ground say that the Mexican cartel is totally in charge of the border and the border cities. They either allow people to cross the border if they're getting paid or trading girls for sex trafficking, or they kill them. And obviously, it's very dangerous to cross over into the Mexican border and some of these border cities. And I agree with the Texas officials who say don't travel to Texas don't travel, I'm sorry, to Mexico right now from Texas or from Arizona. It's just too dangerous. And as you said, there's reported at least 550 Americans that are still missing, that went down to Mexico, and they're missing. We don't know what's happened to them. And then the Mexican citizens themselves, there's over 112,000 Mexican citizens that have just disappeared. They're missing. So the cartels are obviously very dangerous. I believe that President Biden and the Democrats' border policies are incentivizing millions and millions of people from all over the world to come across our southern border. And that is part of the problem because he is basically paying the cartels. His policies are making money for the cartels, and it's a sad state of affairs.
You know, you mentioned those numbers. We have some full screens about that, that in 2020, there were 324 Americans missing. If we put those up now, we'll show you this. 324 Americans missing back in 2020. That went up now, as you just said, to 550 Americans who are missing. And the stories are heart-wrenching. These are three of the women missing now. According to the Washington Post today, the parents of missing Americans, they say they don't have enough information or get enough information. Let me read you. This is the parents of a 17-year-old from Houston saying, quote, "They said they couldn't do absolutely anything. They don't intervene in Mexico issues. Now we realize this is a terrible lie." The parents of a 21-year-old son, they did pay a ransom. They said, quote, "There was no movement. There was just diplomatic paperwork." She also contacted the FBI, she said, but they made no progress on the case. So you have parents across this country whose loved ones, whose kids have gone down to Mexico and disappeared. How widespread is this, and what more can the Biden administration do to put pressure on the Mexico City authorities to try and get some of these missing Americans back if they're not, sadly, already killed?
Well, first of all, President Biden needs to change his policies to secure the border. His policies so far have been an open border policy. And then when he says that he's doing more things to secure the border, no, he is not. What he's doing is allowing more people to come into our country when he says, oh, I'll allow 30,000 more people a month to come in legally. Well, that's not solving the border crisis problem. It's just increasing more people crossing the border plus the illegals. As you know, we have almost 5 million people that we know of that have illegally crossed the southern border and another 1.2 million known gotaways that were caught on camera or sensors, but they were never caught. And so it's really his policies that are leading to this problem. I mean, I totally blame the Mexican drug cartels, but Biden's policies of incentivizing illegals to flood here from 165 different countries throughout the world is what is causing this problem. And as you could see from the four that were missing, 2 were killed, 2 were recovered. Our administration can do more to force the Mexican government to cooperate. And I would assume that the Mexican government would want to get their act together and keep Americans safe. Otherwise, tourism is going to go down the tubes.
Yeah, that is for sure. Now, the administration would point to the fact that the numbers are down in January, 40%. Also saying that the new policies of a couple of weeks ago would actually immediately deport people seeking asylum if they don't apply in a third country. Do you think any of these policies that they're now getting stricter on will have an effect? Do you think this will help try and ease this? Or do you think, some in Congress have talked about military action against the cartels? Would you support that to get tougher on the cartels if they're a national security threat, which they are, to our country?
If Biden does what he actually proposes he's going to do, which would basically say, if you're claiming asylum and you're in a safe third country, don't come in. That's what Trump did. It was the remain in Mexico policy, basically. But I'll believe it when I see it, because I talked to Yuma, Arizona officials, and they've been promised for about a year now that Biden was going to close the gaps in the Yuma, Arizona border fence, and they haven't. It's very frustrating. President Biden says things, doesn't follow through.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but there are reports that they are doing that. In the Yuma Gap, they are actually building a fence, so the administration is doing that now. But finally, before we go, your advice to fellow Americans about traveling to Mexico. The State Department says 6 states totally off limits. Others, Mexico City and other tourist areas have kidnapping and crime. That's the State Department saying that. What is your advice to those who may be planning a trip across the border?
I certainly wouldn't travel to Mexico for vacation, and I would recommend that all U.S. citizens do not do so until the Mexican government takes control of the Mexican cartels and the corruption that goes on in the government, which, that's been going on for years. So I would recommend against traveling to Mexico.
Instead, go to Arizona. Scottsdale is beautiful. Go up to Sedona. You have a beautiful state, Congresswoman. Congresswoman Debbie Lesko of the great state of Arizona. Thank you.
Thank you.